Hello there and welcome back to my YouTube channel and to today's video all about how not to fail the Advanced Audit and Assurance ACCA P7 exam. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Hafsa today, who, like myself, we've both attempted the Advanced Audit and Assurance paper. And for the transparency of the channel, as ever, I previously failed the Advanced Audit and Assurance paper with a lovely 41. But came back to pass it with a fantastic 55. For anything over 50, marvelous stuff. But Hafsa has kindly come on to talk about her experiences, that she did unfortunately fail it 3 times, but came back with an even better score of 64, which is absolutely fantastic. So Hafsa, first of all, feel free to introduce yourself and thank you so much for your time to come on to discuss your experience.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, James. I'm looking forward to kind of catching up about this exam that we both miserably failed, but happily came back from. Yeah, so I'm exam qualified now, so I feel like I've got I can look back and happily provide some advice, albeit I wouldn't go through it again myself.
You can reattempt it, it's all right. Now, we're going to have lots of viewers who may have the Advanced Audit and Assurance exam tomorrow, next week, next month. We're going to walk and talk through all the key elements from your experience and mine. I'll put all the timings down below, so feel free to check them out. And well, where would be the first place to start? What is the key thing not to fail the Advanced Audit and Assurance exam, in your opinion?
I think it's really important with going into these strategic professional exams. It's really important that it's less about kind of your calculations and heavily about the content, but it's actually more about structure and exam technique. And I think, yes, did fail it the first time because you kind of, I think I was naive about the structure and kind of naive about the exam technique and how important it was to the examiner. So you kind of have to bear in mind that with these qualitative exams, they're very heavy written. Examiners will see a lot of papers and you don't want to provide them with something where it's just a block of writing. You want to provide something with a bit of structure, something with a little bit of a crisp view. And that sounds so strange because obviously you need to know the content, but I think there's a different, and I'm sure lecturers would have kind of told students this, but there's a difference between writing a paper that's kind of not got any paragraphs against a paper that does have paragraphs. And I think the examiners just prefer it when you structure it well.
Completely agree. Even the small things, if you see a full page, and it happens in the Advanced Audit and Assurance paper because there's quite a lot of writing in it. But you need to structure your answers. Say, right, here's my first paragraph. Imagine what the marker's going to think when they look at that. Right, here's James's first paragraph. How many marks can I give for that paragraph? Okay, next point, leave a line onto the next one on there. Completely agree with you. It helps the marker and it helps you actually to structure your answer to say, oh, I made the point about that area there. Now I'm going to move on to this area. And you should be more effective with the way you communicate your answer, I would say.
Yeah, and I think as well, it manages your time so much better. All the exams are so time pressured, but I think if you can, I'm a waffler, I could write and talk for days, but I think if you can kind of in your head plan a concise sentence, then your time management, you're already ahead of time. So I think it's the questions like your audit risks or your business risks, and they're the bigger questions. You want to, when you're planning, take the scenario. And one thing I learned is they never give you information if not to use. They want you to use every bit of information, because there's likely to be something wrong with it. So that's for you to comment on. So, take your heading and then you've got your first sentence, with the audit risk questions, if you structure them in like a 3-structure process where you've got your materiality, then you enter and then you link it back to an accounting standard. And then, your final sentence will link it back to whether it's understated or overstated. That's your 3 marks. So, when you do it like that, it's time management.
Well, completely agree. And you said so many good points on there that people are, oh my gosh, right, we're gonna have to go back and write that down. That's just the basics of even writing down the company's names or the individuals in the actual scenario really helped me. And that really took me from when I failed it first time to passing it the second time. And secondly, to add what you were saying, actually using the keywords from the requirement to structure your answer, because like you said, that they're not putting those words and that information in there. they didn't want you to use it as well. But go into a bit more detail from what you talked about there. How did you structure the sort of audit risk, the business risk kind of questions and answers? Because you touched on it about overstating, understating, applying the standards scenario. What's the sort of basis that you used to apply?
So I did refresh myself on a mock just so I can kind of give a specific example. And there was a company, I don't know, let's just call them XYZ.
Yeah.
And they were, you know, they wanted to develop their website. So if you use that as a specific example, your heading will be XYZ developing a company website, and you underline that, and that's the basis. Your examiner knows what you're talking about. Your first sentence will then be, okay, as you said, take the question, so evaluate it, take what you've taken from the scenario. So even if you just regurgitate what the scenario has said, so XYZ wants to develop a website, the value of this project will be 5% of your total assets. And that kind of quickly brings my point of make sure you know your materiality thresholds.
Definitely.
So for your total assets, your revenue and your profit before tax. And then, you know, your second sentence, you've established your materiality. So enter, go to your next sentence, and then link it back to an accounting standard. You don't need to name it. So there's sometimes pressure that you think you need to, you don't get marks for naming your accounting standard. So, you know, link it back to an accounting standard, link it back to the company. So say XYZ, you know, if we link it back to intangible assets, XYZ needs to, maybe they want to capitalize the asset, but probably they maybe shouldn't based on, I don't know, whatever the accounting standard says. Then you've established what might be wrong with the scenario. Then you go to your next sentence and you say, if they've incorrectly capitalized it because the project's not going to be successful, they've overstated their assets by this amount, or they've understated their expenses. Yeah, so you know, that's just using that example. That's how I would probably structure it.
No, really good way of going about it. And also to add to that, there is also the ethical aspects of this examination that you should expect to see. I mean, what was your experience of ethics and applying that as well?
Yeah, so ethics is so important, and it comes up, I think, with all your strategic exams, and they're just good marks to get. They're nice little kind of pockets of the marks that you can just obtain, because if you get given a scenario, you need to evaluate the ethics of that scenario.
Yeah.
Kind of the way in which I would answer it was, how would I react to this in real life? And then just put that down in a piece of paper in bullet points. Now I can't remember how they're specifically come across in the audit exam, but the way I would do it is think about it chronologically. So what would your first step be? Kind of from an ethical perspective.
Yeah. Is this to do with integrity, or do we have a confidentiality breach, for example?
Yes, exactly. You know, is it, and then think about your safeguards as well, I think, you know, kind of, and yeah, just think about it chronologically.
Well, there are some areas that come up a lot more often, shall we say, so you've got to have those in your arsenal as to say, maybe, do we have a conflict of interest? But it really boils down to what you touched on there: application, and application back to the scenario, because that is what the examiner is looking for. If you don't apply it back to the scenario, you could tell them what you're having for dinner or something like that, and I'm sure you'd write a lovely answer about it. But they're not interested in that. They are interested in you applying it back to the scenario. Exactly, if you were in a real life workplace, how would the person who's written the script actually go about a response in the real world, I would say. So it's got to be professional. And talking of professional, there are professional marks in the Advanced Audit Assurance exam. Would you say they are an absolute given that you have to get them?
I mean, they're easy to get, so like, please do try and get them. Obviously, you might miss out on a couple, but you get those marks by simply structuring your answers properly, and you get those marks by including an introduction, a quick introduction, or a quick conclusion. And I just think grab them where you can, because they take marks off the final answer. So you know, you're not looking to get 100% in these exams, you're looking to pass the exam. So get your professional marks, structure your answer properly. You've got your professional marks.
Yeah.
And then obviously then think about adding that back to the scenario to get those extra marks.
Completely agree. Completely agree. When I first started studying, nice lad at where I work just said, James, we'll aim for 100, but we just want to achieve 50. And I always remember that as well.
Yeah.
But to aim for 100, you've got to attempt all 100 marks. It's another reason why when I started to read the external examiner's reports, so many students only attempted, say, 80 or 85% of the exam. So time management comes into it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if you're nervous about the exams, I think 100% attempt every single question without a doubt. Make sure you get some marks in every question, but in your head, aim for a 60% pass. You know, don't try and aim for, when you do that, if you've got a 50-mark question, which you do in the audit exam, aim for, you know, at least, you know, 30 marks of those, because then you're guaranteed to get yourself over 50% of a mark, if that makes sense. So if you're feeling pressure, you don't think you're going to be able to get all the marks in a question, it doesn't matter, just answer it, because you're gonna get some marks somewhere for saying something.
And one of the reasons why I failed it the first time, I didn't do enough, and I say this so many times on the channel, it's just past papers to time. And look, I know people watching this will be having like a really busy week at work, or you can't be bothered to do it, and you think, oh, you know, I'll be fine, I'll just read through something and it'll be the same. It isn't the same, because you just need to review your answer and go through it and say, have I answered the requirement? How did I get onto time? And another critical thing I got really good on the second time was saying, how many marks would I have actually given myself? And also being really critical on it. And I think that really helped me out. I don't know about you, but what sort of stands out as an area that really sort of flicked the switch so that you got that high mark of 64?
I think it's what you said. It's going back and seeing realistically what would I've given myself. And it's a time pressured exam, so doing that can be difficult. I think practicing those papers, practicing the questions outside of the exam under time pressure. If you don't have time to do a 3-hour mock, which is understandable when people try and tackle work as well, at least practice a 25 marker under complete exam conditions, because then you can, I think usually it's 1.8 minutes per mark. At the right time. But you know, if you practice, you can probably do it in 1 minute and 6, for example, and those extra minutes in the exam are really invaluable to be able to go back and go, okay, I actually, and also, as you said, it's going back and seeing the requirements from the actual question. I think in the first exam, first couple, it was missing what the question was actually asking you, which is so obvious, but when you're in that position, it's not as obvious as you think. You might be asked to discuss something, and actually instead you've evaluated it, and the difference between those are, it's vital to the answer.
You're going down the wrong road or the wrong tangent. It's completely off on that. And I mean, for anyone out there who maybe doesn't work in audit, Hafsa, what would be your sort of advice to them? I mean, how much experience have you had in audit, and how did that sort of help you when you attempted this exam?
So, I mean, I did a year in internal audit. So it did, I guess it helped, but equally, you don't need to be in audit to do the audit exam. It's really just about, as we've already spoken about, it's about the structure, but it's also just about knowing your general accounting knowledge. You don't need to know your accounting standards in detail, but as long as you have a rough idea on your assets and a rough idea on your leases and recognizing revenue, you can pass the exam. It's just about looking at risks, which I think people do in their jobs every day and in their lives every day. It's just about looking at those risks and just understanding what the question's asking you.
Yeah, spot on. And if anyone like myself, who I didn't work in the audit area, I thought about it in the future, and I went, well, if you're going to go maybe work in audit, you better have a go at the exam. So the technical articles on ACCA's website, very helpful on aspects you're maybe not familiar with. There are some books on understanding the audit process, because it was all well reading about it, but then you have to be able to picture it as well. Is another thing I think is very valuable. And then they also have good free resources on ACCA's website. Reading the mind of the marker. We've already talked about the external examiner's comments on there. So make sure you check them out, all of those aspects. In the edits, I'll put it in the description below. So check them out. They would definitely help from my opinion. But what do you think on that? Did you use those in your preparation?
Yeah, I use those. I absolutely use those. In fact, linking back to that, I think the examiners reports are really useful because they go through the question on ACCA. They go through the entire paper, each requirement, and the weaknesses and strengths of that. So if you print off an examiner's report and you highlight the areas to avoid, you sorted. It's
a winner.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure if they still do it, and I think they do, but there is, I think there's a webinar usually for the strategic professional exams that you can go back and look on, and it's one of the lecturers talking you through how to pass the exam, how to pass an audit exam in a strategic professional environment. So yeah.
You think to yourself, if I'm going to do that exam, P7, Advanced Audit Assurance, maybe hearing from someone who's done it before and passed it could be a good thing to do on there. So yeah. I'll put all the links for it down below, so that can definitely help the viewers out on that. But is there anything else, Hafsa, that's coming to the forefront of your mind that you couldn't sleep tonight if you didn't tell anyone about it?
Do you know what? I know I've just said it, but it's the examiner's reports. They were a lifesaver in a sense of, if you're thinking about the exam technique, they just tell you it's a what to do and what not to do essentially with the examiner's reports. And I enjoyed always printing those off, and it gave me a peace of mind to print those off and highlight what not to do in my exam, so I could at least go in and go, right, okay, the examiner doesn't want to see that, so I'm not going to do that.
I agree. I mean, the other thing that we've not mentioned here is if you've not done the Audit and Assurance F8 exam in a long time, or you've not done audit in like I said, a very long time, it's all good having a look at some of the old articles and stuff for F8, the AA exam, just to refresh your mind and have a look at some of the tutorials or the syllabus areas, just to break it down for you, because some of the questions when you get into the advanced stage, it's advanced for a reason. It's going to be really difficult. So having a look at those would be another sort of tip that I would say. It's all right to go back and have a look, because the worst thing you could do is attempt an exam and then just look at the answers and then just go, oh, well, I'm miles off here. So that'd be definitely something what I'd have to say. But I mean, overall, I must say, huge thank you for coming on and sharing all of your insights on that. It's been super helpful. And if you've got any questions for Hafsa and myself, or what we should do, Hafsa, is let us know in the comments down below how you got on. We will look at them. Will you comment, and if anyone's got any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to know how people have gotten on and whether this has helped. But honestly, thank you so much for having me, and I hope this helps a few students out there.
Oh, honestly, I can tell you now, it definitely will. So let us know when you've got the exam, which country you've got the exam. Maybe you're watching this and you failed the Audit and Assurance exam before as well. It's all right. That would make 3 of us. So it's okay. Feel free to put any tips if you've done the exam yourself in the comments below. And it'd be absolutely epic to hear from you. But like I said, Hafsa, thank you so much. Feet up now. You haven't got any more exams to do either.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So guys, if you want access to all my free videos, all the free resources, just subscribe. You get access to all the new videos. And of course, Hafsa's been a delight today. So make sure you like this video as well, so it'll help out more students on there. But as Hafsa was saying, follow the tips through. You won't have to do any more exams, and it's all rosy nosy after it, isn't it, Hafsa?
Yes, it is. I promise.
Well, on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. Cheers.